This is my testing video for my Waitrose Organisation and Allocation program. This is the graphical user interface for the first page that opens up when the program is run. So this is the login page and the employees use it to gain access to the program. So the first test that we're going to do is some erroneous data. So if we put in an employee ID that does not exist in the database, employee IDs for Waitrose have to be 7 digits long. So this employee ID will not be valid and will never be valid. So if we just put in any passcode, I'm putting in 4 zeros. Then if we press the submit button, it's then found that this employee ID value is not currently in the database. So it's told you that that employee does not exist. We can now put in a employee ID that is valid, but an incorrect password. So if we just go into the graphical user interface for the MySQL database, so this is my database and we've got all the tables here. So in the employee details table, we can see Shani Roberts here. She's not a manager and her employee ID is this and her password is 0000. So if we go back to the login page and put in her employee ID, and I'm entering 1111. I'm aware that you cannot see that, but as part of my requirements, I needed to cover up passcodes. So if we press the submit button, it's now said the username and password is incorrect. So now as a final test, we're putting some normal data. So we'll put in her employee ID again and her password, which is 0000, and press submit. Now here we've been taken to the contents page. As I mentioned before, she is not a manager here. The contents page has only showed 8 options. If she was a manager, it would show 18. This will be tested later on. So first of all, we can test the contents page by putting in incorrect options. So if we put in an option of 26, this is not a option for non-managers or managers. This is erroneous data. We press submit. Sorry, that menu option is not valid. We can now try some extreme erroneous data. So if we put in the option 9, this data, this input would be allowed if they were a manager. So this test is testing that that also works. It's checking that non-managers should not be able to enter manager options. So if we press 9 and type, again, that menu option is not valid. We can also try putting in a word, hello. Again, that menu option is not valid. Okay, so now we can test that each one of these options takes us to the right place. We wouldn't want it so that if you type in 1, then it takes you to option 6 or anything like that. So we need to go through and check that each of these works. So if I type in 1, it's now taking us to this page. Okay, so we're now testing the first option from the contents page. So in this option, there's quite a few things you can do because we're editing their own details. So this bit just shows all the details so we can keep an eye on it. So you can change employee name, manager, phone number, or date of birth. You cannot change your employee ID. So if we first update employee name, you can have it with a space or without. I'll show that. So if we type in Shani Quinn, for example, then it says update successful. We refresh it. There's Shani Quinn. So now we can try it with a space and change it back to Shani Roberts. It says update is successful again, and it's changed back in the database. So we can change the manager option as well. So if we type manager and type yes and press submit, it says update was successful. We can change their phone number, and if we put in some data, for example this phone number, and press submit, it says update was successful. We can also, we need to check that worked, sorry. Okay, there we go. So we can also do that without the space as well. So I put phone number and just put anything 7111 says update was successful, and we can see it's changed. Now for date of birth, so we put in birthday, and it tells us the correct format to put it in. So if we change it to 1601 and says update was successful, and we can see their date of birth has changed. So all these tasks have passed, and to return to the contents page, just type yes and press the submit button, and we're taken back. Okay, so we're just going to run some erroneous tests on option 1. So if you just go here. So here's the details. We're using Shani Quinn, and so if we do the phone number, so it checks that it is all numeric. So if I put in hello, it's not valid, so it's successfully found that and it's passed the test. That was erroneous data. And manager, oh yeah, manager, and if I put hello here, it should, yeah, so it said here it has to be yes or no, so it's told us that we've put in the wrong input. And if we just refresh the page, we can confirm that neither of those, phone number or manager, has changed, so it's passed these 2 erroneous tests. We're now testing option 2, which is to view all the available overtime. So if I just normally typed into this, would just show me all the shifts that the employee can do. But in order to test this properly works, we're going to do some white box testing. So I've placed a breakpoint in the program just when this option is called. So when I type in 2 and press submit, the program will stop at the breakpoint so that we can go through the code and find exactly what's happening. So this is case 2, and this valid shifts list is just, at the moment it's got nothing in it, and it's a list of all the shifts that the employee can do, and then we're calling this function here, and this function will find those shifts and put it into this list. So when we go down and go to the function, so the first thing we're doing is we're setting up the database connection, and then we'll find their age, and this is in a session, so this is coming from another page. It's coming from the verify login page. So when the program opens and the user types in their ID and passcode, it finds out how old they are in the database and saves that as a session, so we can find it from other pages. We're then defining their longest shift, and at the moment that's 0, but that is the longest time that they can work. So if they are 18 or older, that will be 12 hours. If they are less than 18, it will be 8, but that will be found using their age. Yeah, so then this stores all their sections that they're trained in, and these store all the details of any shifts that we find before we decide that they are valid. And valid shifts is the list that we will use to store the shifts that are valid, and this will be returned. So if they're over 17, which this employee is, then their longest shift will be 12. So we can see here it's stored it as 12. So now we're opening the database and we're finding all the sections that she is trained in. So we go down here. I believe she's trained in 3 sections, but we can check that just in a second. So if we have a look here, it's found bakery, deli, and customer service. So if we go into the database and go into training, I'm pretty sure her employee ID starts with 2876330. So if we go into training and find all the, so here we can see deli, bakery, and I think customer service at the bottom. Yeah, so customer service, so that's found them correctly. If we go back and go down a bit. So we've now found all the sections that she's trained in, and we're closing the database. So for each of these sections, basically we're now finding all the shifts, all the overtime shifts in this section that she could do. Now, since she's not a manager, we need to make sure that the manager required for these shifts is no, and the shift date is larger than today. Yep, so now we're just executing that query, and so it didn't find any shifts for this section. This section is our deli, and we're running it again, and they've now found a section, so they're now finding the length of the section of the shift, sorry, to make sure that it's not longer than her longest shift. So here we're just working out how many hours it is and how many minutes, what the times are. So say if it's, I think it's 7 to 11, so it'll do 11 minus 7, and if it was like 11:30, then it adds on 30. If it was 7:30, then it minuses 30 minutes. It's just an algorithm to find the length. So here we can see the length is 4. So now we're adding all the details of this shift to all of these lists. And it only found one, so it's going, and then it will go around again, and now we're with customer service. And I don't believe, no, it won't find any for this one. Okay, so now we are checking that that shift is not already fully booked. So the way that the database works is that in the shift details, I can show you here. So in the shift details, the quantity says how many people are needed for this shift. So if it was needed 2. So then when we do book someone, this goes into bookings. And so we need to check how many records there are in bookings with that shift ID to make sure that we won't exceed the quantity. So say for this shift we needed 2, and in bookings there were 2 records with that shift ID. That meant that we had fully booked that shift and no one else could get on it. But if there was only 1 record, then 1 more person can have that shift, or if there's 0 records, then 2 more people can have that shift. So we're just making sure that we don't exceed the quantity that's required for each shift. So if we go back, so we're just basically looking for all the records from bookings with that shift ID, and if there are any, then we count them up. So I don't think there are for this shift, but if there were, then it's just counting up how many there are, and then if it's not smaller than the quantity in the shift details, then it removes it. So it's not removed at this time. So now we're going to check that this overtime shift does not clash with any of their existing shifts. So basically we go through the table and we find all the employee's existing shifts. I believe for this employee, she only has 1, but we can check that. So if we just look down the shift ID column and see, I think hers is the last one. Yeah, so she only has 1 existing shift and it's on a Saturday. And I believe this shift is on a Thursday, so it shouldn't clash. So we're now finding that day, and since this shift day is a Saturday and the day is Thursday, we don't need to work out if they clash timing wise, because they're different days, so they won't. So that's fine, that valid shift is true. So since it's now a valid shift, we are adding it to the list of valid shifts, and then we are returning valid shifts back to the call here. So then for each of these valid shifts, since there's only 1, we're then finding the details of this shift so that we can present it in a table. So here we are writing it to the table, the shift ID, shift date, start time, end time, and section. Yeah. So we just press continue. Now we can see it's written that to the table on the graphical user interface, so that has worked successfully. We're now testing option 3, and as part of this option, basically it prevents the user from picking a shift that is not valid. So it uses the same function that 2 uses. So in order to find out, as part of this testing, what shifts the user can do, we're just going to enter 2 to begin with and see. So they can do shift 30. So we now put yes and return to the contents page. So we're back here, and now we can go to option 3. So we know that the shift ID is shift 30, but a shift that they cannot do is option 1. So it says that shift is not available to you because it wasn't as part of valid shifts. We can put in a word. So these are all erroneous data, so these shifts, we're looking for them not to work. So it's passed again. And so now we can put in a normal piece of data. So we can put in shift 30, since we know that that is one they can do. It says registering interest was successful. We are now testing option 6, which is to delete an overtime shift interest. We're using the employee Shani Roberts, I think it is at the moment. Yep, Shani Roberts. So that's her user employee ID. So we go in the interest table, we can see that she's interested in shift 30 and 4. We're going to use shift 30. So if we just go back to the page and type 6. So if we type 30, submit, deletion was successful. So we go into the database, go into the interest table. We can see that's no longer there, so it's successfully deleted it from the database. We can now test option 7, which is to edit the maximum overtime hours they would like to do. So if we go into MySQL Workbench and look at it, so we're using this user, Shani Roberts, we can see that her maximum hours are currently 20. So if we go back and put in option 7, and we'll say 10 for this. It now says update was successful, so if we go back here and open this again, it's now changed to 10. So it was 20, now it's 10. But we can also, that was a normal test, so we can also try some erroneous data. We put in hello, says there was a problem changing your maximum hours. So we can see that it doesn't let erroneous inputs through. That test has passed. If we go back to the contents page, we can now test option 8. So if we have a look at her digit code is currently 0000. We're just going to check the system to change your password. So first of all, if I put in an incorrect password, I'm typing 1234, and then I'll put 1111 and 1111 again. So it says it's currently incorrect. So if I do now, that was another erroneous test. If I put in another, so this is her correct password, and if I put in 2 passwords that don't match, for example 1111 and 2222, it says they don't match. If I put in some that aren't long enough, 111 and 111, says they have to be 4 digits. Lastly, if I put in a word, so if I put in AAAA and AAAA, it says it can't contain letters. Now for a normal test that should actually be accepted, we're putting in her password again, 0000. And if I put in 1111 and 1111, this is correct use of the program, and it says it's successfully changed. So if we just go here and open it again, we can see that her password is now 1111. So it's successfully changed it and that test has passed. So we can now test that the program allows manager access and that it appropriately realizes that this employee is a manager and presents them the correct options in the contents menu. So if we just go into the database GUI, here we have Harry Stevens, who is a manager. So if we just take his employee ID and his password is 0101. So just go in here and so when press submit, it should take us to the contents page, which has correctly shown us the full manager menu. So this test has passed. So now we need to test all the manager options. So if we do option 9 to begin with, to add a new employee. So first of all, we'll do a normal test. So if we just create an employee ID, so do a normal one. It has to be 7 digits long. It's just a random name. No, you do not have to enter their phone number as well. This is something because when a manager is creating a new employee, they're unlikely to know the personal details like their phone number and things like that. So the employee can then log in and change that themselves. So if we then change their birthday, let's say 1993 September 29th. So it's now said it's successful, so we can check in the database. So we scroll down to the bottom, we can see Josh Morris, his phone number hasn't been put in and his birthday. And when they're created, their password is automatically put to 0000. So when he logs in, he'll have to change this himself. Okay, so we're just going to do some erroneous tests on this option now. So the first one we'll do is we'll enter an employee ID that already exists. So that's one from the database. Josh Morris, no, and a date of birth. It doesn't matter what I do for this, so I can even do that. And it says it already exists in the system. The next one we'll do is an ID length that isn't 7 digits. So if I just do 11111, so that's 5 ones, Josh Morris, no, and again I'll just do that date. Yeah, so it needs to be 7 digits long, so it's told us about that. We'll do an ID number that isn't all numeric. Josh Morris, no, and again. Yeah, so it's said it here. The employee ID cannot contain any alpha characters. So we'll just make up a random one now. 4370942. I don't know. Josh Morris. So we'll do if the manager in here, if we don't put no or yes. So if I put hello, we'll just check that that works. Yeah, so manager can only be yes or no. So that's successful. These are all erroneous tests. And the last one is that the phone number is not all numeric. George Morris. Wait, I'll change that just in case that's one that already exists. 2783091. No. Hello. Yes, so the phone number cannot have any letters in it. So all these erroneous tests have passed. So we're now testing option 10. So that's to edit an employee's details. So if we just go here and we want to view some details about our employee, we can use the same one that we always use, Charlie Roberts here. So first of all, you just put her employee ID in here so we can view all the information about her. So let's change her phone number. Oh, we need to put her employee thing in again and phone number. And we'll change it to 0782311. Submit. Then if we just put her employee ID in, we can see that it's now changed. Should we change her name? Oh no, sorry, wrong column. That one. Employee name. And then Shani Quinn. Submit. Put in here. There we go, we see it's changed. We can change manager and change that to yes. Here we can see it's been successful again. We can change her birthday as well. So in this one, we just put it down here. Just change it to that. There we go. And view that. So yeah, her birthday has been successfully changed. We also have a few erroneous tests for this option. So first of all, if the name was not all alpha characters. So we just put in the user ID, employee name, and then let's put Shani 12. Yep, so that's it, and it's rejected that input. The next one is if manager is not yes or no. Put that in again. Manager. Yep, so that's worked. And lastly, the phone number if it's not all numeric. Yeah, so that's all these erroneous tests have passed. We're now testing option 11, which is to add new overtime shifts. So we'll just put in 11. And first of all, we'll just do a normal test and check that it will add new shifts. So if I just put in a date, we'll put the 4th. Shift start time, we'll do 9 till 1. Oh no, that's not what I meant. 9 till 1. Where is it? Bakery. No. How many? 1. So it says it's successful. We can now go check in the database and check that it was actually added. If we scroll down to the bottom, we see bakery, no, 9 to 1, correct date as well. So yeah, that's all been added successfully. But now we can do some erroneous tests. So if we do a section that doesn't exist, the program checks what section you enter against all the accepted options. If I put in a word that shouldn't be accepted, it should reject it. So if we do 10 till 4, for example, so hello, 1. So yeah, that section's not valid, so that's fine, it's rejected it. So we can now do shift quantity. As it's expecting a number, if we put in a word, that should be rejected as well. So 10 till 4. Customer service. No and no. Yep, so that's fine, that was rejected as well. And lastly, manager. So 10 till 4. Hello. 1. Yep, so that's not been accepted either. So we can check in the database lastly and check that none of those were accepted. No, the last one was the one that we entered with bakery, so that's fine. we can then return to the contents page, and next we can test number 13. So number 13 is viewing all the shifts larger with a date like today or in the future that have not been allocated yet. So here we can see we've got 4 shifts and the date is all larger than today's date. So that's all fine. And we can return to the menu. Now test option number 14. So basically this one does not validate whether these 2 people can go together, because this is basically allowing a manager to override that algorithm, so they can allocate any employee to any shift as long as the employee ID and the shift ID are valid and the shift is not already fully occupied. So first of all, if we just go into the GUI and find, so we put 32 and let's say this employee, this should be accepted. So that has allocated the overtime. If we go and check that that has actually done that, we can see here 32 and yep, so that was all right and it's allocated it. So that's passed that test, but we can also check if it accepts an employee ID that isn't valid and a shift ID that isn't valid. So that one does not exist in the database, that's fine, that's rejected that input, so that's passed that erroneous test. Another one is if we put that in, let's do 50 because that's not a shift ID currently. Yeah, so it's basically said that shift cannot be allocated. If we could also find a shift that has already been allocated. So let's have a look, shift ID 1. Let's check how many they wanted. They wanted 2, what about shift ID 2? So shift ID 2 has been allocated and they only wanted 1 person. So that would be a good one to do. Yeah, so it says the same thing. So that one's already been allocated, so it can't have any more. So that has passed all its erroneous tests and its normal tests. So we can now test option 15 to delete an overtime agreement. So if we just type 15, press submit. So first of all, we'll do a normal test. So if we go into the database, go into bookings and find, so we could do this employee ID and 32, and it should delete it. Update was successful, so we'll just check bookings again and check that that's not in there. Yep, so it's been deleted. We can see in the old version that it was here, but now it's not. So that's all worked correctly. But next we could do, you know, an employee ID that does not exist, and that will say there's no current booking. The way it works is it looks for the booking between these two. So no matter what we put in, if there's not a booking between these two, it will just say there is currently no booking. So I could put in a valid thing and I could put in 32 again, which currently doesn't exist. It will say there's no booking. So yeah, that's passed the erroneous test. So lastly, we can check option number 18. So if we just type 18, submit. So it's taking us to the right page. And so now we're going to do a normal test first. So we need to find an employee ID and give them a section that they don't already have. So let's just go into the database GUI. So we found Rachel Bradford. So looking at her employee ID, I have found that she's trained in deli, customer service and fresh. So since she's not trained in bakery, I thought that would be a good one to add to her. Oh, there we go. So if I put in bakery, update was successful. So if we just reopen training, here we can see bakery, and so it's successfully added her. So now we can do some that will not work. So we can do customer service, that will be allowed, but the employee ID won't be. So it's successfully found that employee ID does not exist, so that's erroneous data, and it was rejected, so the test passed. Lastly, we can also do a section that doesn't exist, and that's not a valid section, so it's passed all types of erroneous data. Okay, so we're going to do some white box testing on the allocation algorithm, which is number 12. So this is the biggest part of the program. This is the algorithm that allocates employees shifts based on the number of hours they want to do, the length of the shift, and things like that, and what they're interested in. So just to have a look at the database before we do this. So in the interest table, so we currently have, so that one's an odd shift. So that is one employee for 30. So we have 2 employees going for 30, and then one for 32 and one for 31. So we're going to see how this allocates it. I've put a breakpoint into the program so we can run through exactly what it's doing at each point. So when we press 12, submit. So now we are in the input section, which is where it finds all the employees and all the shifts that it's going to do. So first of all, so it's going through all the employees. So this, as you can see, it's found their age using that function, and then it's found that they are under 18, and now it's classing them as an under 18. So this is instantiating a new employee. And adding them to the employees list. So next result, I'll just show you that find age one because I kind of skipped over it. So this is one of my prototypes. This is basically, so it's basically just working out how old they are based on what year they were born in, what month, and the day. So since it's not the month that they were born in, and it's less, then yeah. So this employee is also under 18. So we can skip ahead a little bit to here, because that's going to take a while going through all the employees. Okay, so now we're here. So if I just find the employees list. So we've got 10 employees in here. So we can see this employee, this is Shani Roberts. So her longest shift is 8. So this employee's longest shift is 12 because they're over 18. Theirs is 8. Theirs is 8. This is 8. So yeah, so we've got all the employees in here. And now we're finding all the shifts. So we're basically finding all the overtime shifts in the database. So we'll add those to temp IDs and temp quantity. We can skip ahead a bit as well because that will take a while. So if I show you temp IDs, so we've got 23 shifts in here now. And those are all the shifts. And these are their quantities. So now we are checking on if this shift has already been filled up. So if in bookings, say if a shift needs 2 people and there's 2 records in bookings, then that shift is already full. So then it will not progress this shift, so it will not be used in the allocation program. So this is for the first shift ID 1. So there is 1 in the counter, or there's 2. And so temp quantity count is 2. So since we found 2, it will not be added to valid shifts. So this will just go around for every shift. So if we move to here, so these are all the shifts that have passed the last stage. So now we are adding them as new shifts. So as you can see here, we're defining them as a new shift with their shift ID, their shift date, their start time and their end time, and adding that to the list of shifts. So here you can see we're saturating a new shift. Yeah. Next, we will be fine. I'm just going to skip ahead again because it'll take a while to go for every single one. So next we are finding all of the employees, all the records from the interest table. So for each employee, so it's for each employee and for each shift. If there is a record linking them to, then we will add that to the signed up for the shift. So in this case there wasn't, but for some there may be. Well, there will be for sure, because we saw that in the database. Yeah. I'm just trying to get to one, but it might take a while because I think the shift IDs were 30 and 32 and 31. So yeah, so we can just skip ahead because now it's going to go into the main allocation. Here we are right now, so we can skip ahead and then view what it was. Yeah, okay. Oh, here we are. Okay, so then we have our list of shifts. So there's 16 or 14 of them now. Oh, yeah, 16. And so then we need to bubble sort them to put them in order of the length. So there's a sub for this one. So this is just a typical bubble sort, but it's a bit different because it has to find their lengths and arrange them based on that fact. So it just goes through and swaps any 2 that are in the wrong order, and it just does that repetitively. Yeah, so we can just put a breakpoint here. Okay, so shift this, here we can see that length is 6, that's 4, that's 4, so it's all in order with the biggest length at the top. So then we're going through these shifts, so we're doing it, so because it was bubble sorted, we're doing it so the longest length at the front, so that will be dealt with first. So if an employee has signed up for multiple shifts, then they will more likely to get the longer one, basically, because that's a bigger priority. So then for each shift we have our people that are interested in that shift. So then we have signed up, and this is another bubble sort. So it's quite similar to the last one, but it's doing it based on the employees, how many hours they want to do, and these hours will decrease as they are allocated shifts. So we've used get hours left in this one. So oh, no. So that one didn't have any, but we'll change for each one. So yeah, so that one didn't have any people interested in it. Yeah. So then since it didn't, it's added to unfilled shifts. So it does this repetitively for each shift, sourcing all the people that are signed up for it. So yeah. So I think we have seen exactly how it works now. So yeah, this one didn't have anybody either. Yeah, so a lot of them didn't because I didn't add many to the database. But we can press continue and see what was allocated. So we can see that it has actually allocated shifts here. So here we have this employee was allocated shift 31, this employee was allocated shift 32, and this employee was allocated shift 30. And here are all the shifts that went unallocated. Since I've been free that have been allocated, just to check that it has put it into the database, we can go into the graphical user interface into bookings, and we can see here that we have shift 30 is given to 287, etc. So we can check, yep, that's correct. Shift 32 was 348. 32, yep, that's the right employee ID. And oh, this one. 9537 31. Yep, so that's all correct. So it's put them into the database as well, booked them with that, so it's properly allocated them shifts. So I think we have found that this algorithm has worked correctly. So we are now going to be testing option 4. So I'm using Shani Quinn or Shani Roberts, I keep changing her name, but that employee, so this one, the first one here. So press 4. So this basically shows her weekly timetable. She only has one contractual shift, and to find her overtime shifts, basically you just select a date and it will find, from today's date until a certain shift day, so that will find all the overtime shifts between today and that date. So she has one, which is this shift here. So if we just go into the database and check that that's right. So that's her employee ID here, 2876330. So here we can see 287, this is an old shift and so are these, so these won't count. But this one is on the 4th of April, so that one's in the future. So yep, so we can see that's in the bookings, and if we go into shift details and just find that shift, we can see it's on the 4th. So yeah, that's in the future, that's fine. That's the only one that should come up, just to make sure. Shift number 4, 12 and 17. So number 4, that was in 2018, 12, that was in 2018, and shift number 17, that was the 26th of March. So that was old as well. Yeah, and then we'll check her existing shifts as well, just to make sure that's right. So yeah, I believe she only has one. So here it is, bakery, it's on a Saturday. So yep, we can see that bakery. So this one has worked well. Okay, so we'll just return to the contents page now. Now we can press option number 5. So this shows all your future overtime agreements. So she only has one, again as shown. So we can just double check that again. So if we go into, so this is her employee ID, Shani Quinn. If we go into bookings, the latest one she has is shift 30. There's also 4, 12 and 17, but these are all out of date. So we'll just check that. So this one is on the 4th of April. So that's in the future, that's fine. That should be the only one that shows up, because the other ones, so what was it? 12, 4, 12 and 17. So 4, that's 2018, 12 is 2018, and 17, so that's in March, so that's out of date as well. So that's passed its test, that's found all the shifts in the future. So we can now test option 16. So I'll type it in and I'll explain how I'm going to test this. So basically when you do this, they can then choose a date, and it will go through all the existing shifts and take everything that's on the day of that. Say if I pick a date that's a Thursday, it will go through and find all the shifts that are on a Thursday, plus any overtime shifts. So to make sure this fully works, I want to pick a date that does have overtime shifts, so it finds existing shifts and overtime. So we're just going to go into the database and make sure we find one of those. So we go into bookings. So I was thinking shift 17 might be a good one to do. So 17, that's on the 26th of the 3rd. So if we just put that date in, the 26th. There we go. So we have quite a few shifts. So here we can see that these are all existing shifts, and this is an overtime shift here because it's got the date in it as well, so that's showing that it is an overtime shift. So it's successfully found all the existing shifts. We can just see that if we want to. So then, since that was 26th was a Tuesday, so we just go in here and find, so we've got Tuesday here, so that's customer service, Tuesday here, deli, we've got customer service, deli, so we can see that all these shifts have successfully been found, so this has worked. And since this is a calendar, you cannot put in a date that doesn't work. So if we just go back, now we can test number 17. So we've chosen to reset a user's password. Let's go in here and find a user that doesn't have the password of 000, because that's what it's going to reset it to. So we can use Shani Quinn. So I've just copied her employee ID, just paste it in there, and successfully updated the database. So we'll just go and open that again, check that it has. So yeah, we can see it's reset it to 0000. Also do an erroneous test by putting in an employee ID that isn't right. So if we put in 1, it just says the employee ID does not currently exist. So, and again, it doesn't exist. So we've tried both a number, which is the accepted data type, and a word, a string. So those are both erroneous data that have not been accepted. So that has passed that test.